Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's our very favorite kind of show, a breaking news show, and not just a breaking news show, a live breaking news show. We just recorded the morning show, which I still haven't actually gotten posted yet because we have news. Tony, it's going to be news that people searching for old videos of NFL and MLB games are going to be very confused when this comes up, but it's okay. We're not misleading you. Like, there's nothing we can do. The SEO is going to do what it does. Tony, let the people know about the news.
The news is that Cleveland Villa Angela St. Joe running back Bo Jackson has committed to Ohio State. Was announced just a few minutes ago. One of the top running backs in the 2025 class. 24/7 has him as their number 3 running back. He's the number 5 running back in the composite. Somebody that they've been after for a while. Took a visit to Georgia a couple of weeks ago, took a visit to Ohio State, official visit this past weekend. Has a visit scheduled to Alabama, I think, next week. I don't believe that's going to happen now. You would hope. So Buckeyes get their first running back in the 2025 class, a class that probably has certainly at least one more running back in it. But a week ago, there was talk that Georgia was in the lead for Bo Jackson. He was trending away. And Carlos Locklyn, give him credit, new running backs coach at Ohio State, locked this one up. That's Tom. I believe that's why they call him Coach Lock.
I believe that is why they call him Coach Lock. Yes, this is a really big first commitment for Carlos Locklyn because this is one where we have seen Ohio State running back classes go kind of pear-shaped a couple times in recent years when they had good local options and coaches decided to go chase, the shiny pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And then that shiny pot of gold repeatedly decommitted and went to Miami right before signing day and then left them kind of holding the bag at the end of the class. So to have this is a year where there were a couple of good in-state running backs that they were certainly thinking about. They probably need to because some of those recent classes were a little light. This is a real big year for running back recruiting for Ohio State. And to get a running back of the caliber of Bo Jackson, where it's an Ohio State Georgia battle and Alabama's in there too, like that tells you this is not like, oh, well, it's an in-state kid, but maybe they're just doing it just to keep it. No, that is not what this is. Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama recruiting battle tells you, I think, everything you need to know about what Ohio State is getting with Bo Jackson.
Yeah, and a very important piece of the puzzle as they are now, I believe, at 13 commitments for the 2025 class. And honestly, that should just be not even a halfway point in terms of how many guys they sign this year, as they're gonna lose a bunch to graduation to the NFL. So now that you can get that guy in, and being an Ohio guy, you'd think you got him pretty solid, much different than getting a commitment from a Florida player, especially a running back, as Ohio State knows. But you get this Ohio kid in. Now you can branch out. Now you can really focus in on getting your next guy in. Although the minute you start to put the commit aside and maybe don't give him as much attention as they've been accustomed to, because he's been getting a ton of attention. So you've also got to keep him warm. You got to keep, hey, we're still very happy that you're committed, but now you go get the next guy with him. And yeah, I mean, there are plenty of names out there. I see Mecca Hanna talking about Jordan Davison. He's been a guy that's been a year ago at this time, it looked like he was for sure going to be in this class, or at least everything that we were hearing and being told was that Ohio State was on top. Ohio State very well may still be on top, but that one is still ongoing. And there's, I think Isaiah West is another one that is involved, and they just had a visit from Anthony Rogers, I believe, committed to Alabama. So Tony Alford has had his pool of running backs, and then Carlos Locklyn gets in. He's like, no, I need a bigger pool. We're going to need a bigger boat, going to need a bigger pool. Let's just start, because they were looking at different players from different regions. And so, Carlos Locklyn comes in and he's like, let's offer this guy and this guy. I know this guy. I want, to broaden things out so that maybe you don't get, Tom, as you said, left pear-shaped.
No, you're now in a spot where you would certainly think having an in-state guy, you're much more likely to hang on to that commitment than someone from California or Florida or Texas or wherever else, just because it's close to home. There's a lot, that's always nice for family. There's a lot to sell. The program has the program to sell, and the program has development to sell and all that kind of stuff. But, location is always nice, and quality of program. And, hey, you're probably gonna be playing in the college football playoff pretty much every year from now on is something to sell. So, local guy, that certainly, we talked about this on a Buckeye Weekly podcast pretty recently. Might have even been the show that went up earlier today. You build your class on the foundation of Ohio players. And there are certain position groups where Ohio players have typically been, really, really good players for Ohio State. You go back to, Beanie Wells, for example, like Antonio Pittman. They've brought in a bunch of really good running backs from the state of Ohio, and you supplement that outside, and that's fine. But this is a big, big addition for Ohio State. And, as far as how big the class can go, Mika Hanna wants to know, does Ohio State get Jordan Davison and West as well? West is Isaiah West out of St. Joseph Prep in Philadelphia, home of Jim Knowles and Kyle McCord, and also a receiver by the name of Marvin, who you may have heard of. Jordan Davison out of Mater Dei in California, which is a spot where they do not have much of a pipeline in the last 30 years or so. But, are they going to get all three of those guys? All three of those guys, that would be quite a lift to get all three of those guys. If you get any two of those guys, though, that feels like a really good class. This is a spot, and, we talked on the Buckeye Weekly show that went up less than 24 hours ago about the fact that wide receiver, they're not where they typically are in a wide receiver class, but that's okay because something like 4 of the top 25 wide receivers in the class are committed. Virtually no one has wide receivers in their class. That's not true at running back. With Bo Jackson now committed, the top 6 running backs in the class and 8 of the top 10 are already committed. So, if you can add Jordan Davison, who's the 13th running back in the class, or Isaiah West, who's the 14th running back in the class, if you get 2 of the top 15 guys in the class, that's a real strong class. And with as thin as they are probably going to be at running back after the season, with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins out the door, already lost Dallin Hayden to the transfer portal, you're looking pretty thin right now, where you've got the 2 guys you brought in this year, and then you've got whatever you're going to bring in next year. They want to have 5 running backs ideally in that room. If they're going to have 5 this next year, you got to hang on to the 2 who you brought in for 2024, James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon, and you got whoever you bring in for 2025. And then if you've only got 4 at that point, maybe you're looking at the portal to bring in another guy, bring in a Chip Trainum type to provide some depth.
Well, and they were going to bring in 3 last year, and until Jordan Lyle decommitted, they had, Sam Williams-Dixon was the 3rd running back in that group. And you look at it's really hard to get 3 guys to convince 3 guys to sign in the same team, unless maybe like one of them is from Ohio, like Sam Williams-Dixon was, or like, Bo Jackson is not the 3rd, he's the 1st. But I do wonder if at some point the 3rd guy is somebody from Ohio, somebody from the Midwest, maybe lower on down the radar, and maybe that's a guy that they can turn to and fill out the numbers. But I do wonder if it's going to be 2 in the class, 1 in the portal, and that's the way that is perhaps the best way to do it, because you can also lure in, honestly, another Quinshon Judkins type, because there's going to be no returning starter. Somebody like Quinshon Judkins or whoever is Ollie Gordon, maybe? No, probably not. But like somebody is going to be
he's got to be out of eligibility, right? He must be.
But somebody like that who's going to see Ohio State and see there's nobody there, nobody returning. This could be a big thing. So I think 2 is good enough, and then you swing for the fences at running back in the portal.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll get to swinging for the fences here. But first, we got to get someone who is pointed like he was swinging for the fences and is bunting. Jordan Kapler, Super Chat. It's a great day to be a Buckeye, but more importantly, it's a great day to be a Tom hater. Tom who, he didn't say Tom who, so I'm not sure where he was going with that, but that's okay. It's always, Jordan, we appreciate your patronage. It is always welcome on this show.
Tom Osborne?
Could be, maybe. I'm just looking at other guys in the, who, if they're going to looking to bring in a 3rd running back and they're looking at an in-state guy, we were talking off the air, I believe, earlier today about Kentrell Reinhardt, who's from Westland High School in Columbus. He's camping at Ohio State this week. You never know where those go. Maybe that's someone who ends up as an offer at some point. They've been closely linked to Byron Lewis out of IMG. So that's, there are plenty of names that we've seen and names that we've heard as possibilities. I'm just scrolling through right now the list of, I feel like I'm missing a Marquise Davis, obviously, was the other in-state Ohio running back. He's committed to Kentucky right now. I thought there was one more that I'm forgetting, but does not look like it. No, looks like I am exactly right and have thought about everyone. So good job, me.
Wow. Congratulations on congratulating yourself, Tom. Bo Jackson, clearly not a name we have heard before. And I went back and looked at the first Bo Jackson the first, to look in and see. I wonder, could Ohio State's Bo Jackson put up the same numbers as a freshman or perhaps a better yard per carry average and then Bo Jackson at Auburn. So I went back, and Bo Jackson as a true freshman, 829 yards rushing, 6.5 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns. Tom, if we set those as the numbers, under.
I don't want to bring the vibe down here, so I'm just going to say comparing a high school player to maybe the single most incredible athlete I've ever seen in my life is probably not a fair standard to set. So we'll probably just set that to the side. I think he will certainly outrush Bo Jackson in the moving forward. I think he's probably got a very good chance to do that. But yes, that is probably not a fair standard to set. No, there were people were asking, someone in the comments was asking any relation. No, I don't believe there's any relation between them. People, of course, Tony, we are already, Ohio State landed a commitment 15 minutes ago. So on to the next one. Mika Hanna wants Justin Hill next. And, that's certainly a possibility. Mark Givler had a really in-depth report on how last weekend's official visits went, including Justin Hill, including Bo Jackson. I got to give him a shout out because there's been a lot of smoke around Bo Jackson in Georgia. And he was, and Mark basically said, my pick is not moving off of Ohio State. He's going to go, no matter what you hear, he's going to end up at Ohio State. And he has ended up at Ohio State. Mark was similarly, not necessarily exactly the same wording, but similarly optimistic about the odds of Justin Hill ending up in the class as well. So, those are the kinds of in-state players, Tony, where this is not Paris Johnson. This is not, the number one player in the class by any means. But these are the kinds of players where you have to get them. The in-state guys who are the 4-star, top 100, top 50 type players, you have to get those guys because in the, the new reality of NIL and the portal and all that kind of stuff, the more you can build it with local guys who potentially grew up rooting for the team, and there's maybe a little bit more of it's not a complete mercenary situation. There's probably a little bit of an emotional connection there and a family connection and, being close to home and all that kind of stuff. I think that's only going to get more important. And, of course, they're still going to go out of state and they're going to go get their national 5-star guys from wherever they get their national 5-star guys. But I think it is even more important now, given the realities of modern college football and recruiting and the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff, to build those classes with a really solid foundation from kids from Ohio.
Yeah, and this is a pretty good Ohio class, as evidenced by the fact that you have 3 different guys that are 5-star in at least one recruiting service: quarterback Tavian St. Clair, safety Trey McNutt, and offensive lineman Carter Lowe. Ohio State has commitments from 2 of those guys. Trey McNutt, obviously they're trying, but if you look at the 24/7 composite right now, they've got commitments from 3 of the top 5 guys: St. Clair at 1, Lowe at 3, and Bo Jackson at 5. Trey McNutt, the number 2 guy; Justin Hill, the number 4 guy. Signs look good for Justin Hill. So you're blocking down. You're doing a great job at the top of the state, and you kind of look and see like, well, where does the talent line end? And Ryan Montgomery is the number 7 player in the composite in the state. He's going to Georgia. He had an Ohio State offer. He ended up Tavian St. Clair committed before he did. So that's how that one goes. Marquise Davis, they wanted Luka Gilbert, a big, tall, lanky tight end. They wanted, Cody Haddad, who has a safety committed. He's the number 14 player in the state. Eli Lee, linebacker that is committed to Ohio State, the number 15 player in the state. So it's a pretty deep year this year.
Yeah, definitely a deep year. And those are always the years where when you have an Ohio class where you can get, potentially 8, 10 guys, especially if you're trying to build a deeper class, a class of, they're hoping to not have 22 this year. You think they're probably aiming for high 20s, 26, 28. I don't know an exact number, but as you said earlier, they're losing a lot of guys. Ryan Day said earlier on Tuesday that they are probably pretty much set right now for 2025. And right now they're under by a couple scholarships. They're at 82, 83, something like that. So they're not over. So they've got a couple extra spots, plus they're losing a bunch of guys. So this should be a big recruiting class for them this year, being able to build that over Ohio, on a base of Ohio players where, maybe you get 8, 10 of them. That would be, a really, really good start to getting to the size and caliber of class that they want to get to. The most important super chat in the history of the show, Tony, from Butch Jones. I can only assume former Tennessee and current Arkansas State head coach of the same name. I agree with my brother Jordan about Bo Jackson, but I hereby announce the start of the DOT Defenders of Tom. Get on board, y'all. Strong agree. If you even if you don't want to do that, that's okay. What you think? One thing you could do to help us out would be to hit the thumbs up button when we do live shows like that. That helps other folks find them. So I see how many people are on there. I see how many thumbs up we have, and you have not all done it. So take a second right now, hit the thumbs up, and then we'll move on with the show.
Can I just? DOT is a very fitting. Nobody likes the DOT. Slows traffic. It's annoying. It just ruins. It's the worst thing. It's the worst part about the trip. All of the trips to Indiana that we have to do, Indianapolis every year, is the Department of Transportation, the DOT. And so, yes, that is very fitting. Defenders of Tom, just y'all just in your orange barrels at your meetings, and you just get in the way of traffic, and nobody likes you, and you just. But I digress.
But when I'm here, what are the shows? Basically just one big pothole. So, I mean, you got to sometimes, Tony, you got to put in the work. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Another thing about Bo Jackson from the 80s. So he rushes for 829 yards as a freshman, 1,213 as a sophomore. As a junior, playing in 12 games, he goes from 1,213 yards the year before to 475 as a junior because he's sharing carries with like Brent Fullwood and a bunch of other guys. And then as a senior, rushes for 1,786 yards. What in the world happens between 1,213 yards and 1,786 yards? And you're like, you know what? We're going to give you 87 carries as a junior. You're going to play 12 games, but you're going to get 87 carries.
Was that a Pat Dye? That must have been a Pat Dye Auburn team, right? It must have been.
Yeah.
All right, Tony, I'm going to need you to Google something for me while I'm talking. Pat Dye Pants Lake. I just need you to look that up. There is a story involving Pat Dye, and I don't remember all of the specifics.
Lake Martin?
I need you to. Pat Dye, who is the coach of Auburn, somehow I believe was boating or something and lost his pants in a lake, and they washed up and someone found them later or something like that. I don't remember all the details. It is one of those like great college football stories, and it has been probably 10 to 15 years since I've heard anyone tell it. So I'm a little shy, a little shaky on the specifics, but if we're going to have a Pat Dye conversation, we need to talk about Pat Dye throwing his pants in the lake.
Well, here's one headline. 20 years later, Pat Dye reunited with pants. So, and there's pictures of him holding up these pants that look like they had been in the lake for 20 years.
That's
very happy. Pat Dye gets lost 80s pants back. The fall and rise of Pat Dye's pants. So,
all right. Well, there you go. This show has gotten to where I wanted it to get to. When we started, I'm like, I bet I got to tell the Pat Dye Pants Lake story. So there you go.
Here's one from SB Nation, which is like, what is this? Ex-Auburn coach Pat Dye finds his pants. Good job, I guess.
Sure did. There's probably a Mike Price pants story from his time at Alabama, but that's probably not family friendly enough to tell on the show. Super chat from Omar Austin, DOT for life. Long live the babyface podster. Omar, thank you so much. Omar, a good friend of the show. Omar was we went to lunch with Omar the last time he was in Columbus for the spring game. Always good to hear from him. So appreciate you checking in. And he does say still a distant second to Kevin Big Nooner. Yes, we do love Kevin as well. Oh, clicked on the wrong thing. Sorry. Yes, appreciate Kevin. Someone was asking about Kevin. Yes, Kevin is around. Kevin will be at camp with us tomorrow. Kevin was just not available this evening. He was otherwise occupied, but that's okay. You'll see Kevin later this week. So nothing to fear. Mika wants to know, how many defensive ends and offensive linemen do you land in this year's class? Need a big class for depth. I mean, offensive line feels like they always need a big class for depth.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive line, given it's sort of a similar situation to the running backs, right? I mean, where they've had some late defections. They've had guys who, at one point it looked like, they're going to get Damon Wilson and Marquise Lightfoot and Mateo Uyunglele, and then they went 0-for-3. And last year they had, at one point when Edric Houston was, maybe waffling a little bit, it looked like, are they only going to get one defensive lineman in this class? And that, that would have been an absolute disaster. So yeah, I would say both of those probably, Tony, are spots where they need to go, go pretty deep. 5 on each side of the ball. Is that too many?
No, I don't think that's too many. And again, you've got what did I say? 14 guys now, 13, 14, 13, 14, no, 13. I'm sorry. I got it.
It's a number. That's the important thing.
24/7 is like updating this as we're talking. So it's gone from, so they've got 13 guys. I think you got to approach 30 in a class because there's no reason not to anymore. And especially with, as Ryan Day said today, when we talked to him about your number at 85 and how they're under it. But he also said, in terms of like getting down to 85, said there's more than one way to skin a cat, basically, and how you can handle things. And we've talked before about what Matt Rule is going to do. They had like 96 guys on scholarship, and they're just going to NIL pay for the 11 or however many over the 85 that would have to be cut otherwise, or had their scholarship taken away. So there's no reason not to get as close to 85 as you can and go over. Because we've talked before about how, the one thing you don't want to do is go into a season with like 80. And that's almost what Ohio State's going to be doing this year, is going into the season with 81 or 82 scholarships occupied. So you hand out a few more, but so clearly there's room. And then you swing big. You don't want to reach on guys because it's better to, and maybe here's why you don't necessarily need to go to 30 or 28. If you keep it at 25, you go into the portal and you get guys that can play quicker, play sooner, as opposed to, well, you know what, we've got room. Let's go grab that 3-star from Orville and see how it goes. That's how you used to do it. And if you're going to keep doing things the way you used to do it, you're going to end up like Clemson. And so that's why you don't want to do that. But they've got one offensive lineman committed right now in Carter Lowe, 2 defensive linemen committed in Zahir Mathis and London Merritt. I don't honestly know that you can call Justin Hill a defensive lineman, because he's we've talked about it in a couple of days ago in the Buckeye Weekly, I believe, in terms of he's a 3-4 outside linebacker that they're talking to about playing jack. So he's not Edric Houston. He's not a 260-pound, 250-pound defensive end that's going to come in. He's going to have to be used in his own way. So I don't know that you can count him. Like when they signed Arvell Reese, is like, what's he going to become? Right now he's playing middle linebacker. I don't hear anybody talking about Justin Hill playing linebacker. So maybe in that way, he's a defensive lineman, but he's not necessarily what you would go ahead and just count him as a defensive lineman, in my opinion. Now, he will eventually get there. And really, how many defensive ends just come in? I'm already 265 pounds. I'm ready to go. It's a rare few that are able to do that.
Yeah, that's not a spot where, that's not a spot where even Edric Houston coming into the size he did, he's not going to be an immediate impact guy there. He potentially could be, but they don't really need him to be this year. So yeah, that's a spot where if you're looking at Justin Hill, you can kind of count him as a linebacker. You can kind of count him as a defensive end. So kind of he's in between. How are they really use him? It's almost Tony. Boy, sorry. I apologize. It's almost, who are you taking off the field to put him on the field? And that's kind of where you count him in a class, which I guess is probably more defensive than linebacker. But yeah, that's certainly, wherever they put him, I think they're probably going to be very happy with him based on the scouting reports, based on the recruiting ranking, based on all that kind of stuff. It sounds, he would be, if he is the next edition of the class, that would be another big one. Omar Austin says, what a huge day. We got Bo Jackson, even more huge. Star Wars Acolyte premieres tonight. This seems like something that you probably, Tony, have more thoughts on than I do.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it. Star Wars shows I like them. Some are better than others. We'll see. I'm waiting for it to get dark to watch this one. I think it's a 2-episode premiere, Tom, so get excited. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. See how it goes. It takes place from way before the Star Wars that you know of. No, you're thinking Mork from Mork, Tom. That's a completely different universe. That's the Morkverse. We're talking about Star Wars, the Lucasverse, if you will.
All right. And Tony, I almost certainly will. There was a little pause, I'm sure, while I was doing some scrolling through the Cleveland Villa Angeli St. Joseph Hall of Fame. Greg wants to know, has Ohio State ever recruited a kid from Villa Angela St. Joseph? Where is it? It's in Cleveland. I was just scrolling through the Hall of Fame there. Lots of familiar names. Clark Kellogg, yes, is the most famous Buckeye name. I'm going through alphabetically, and I got to the K's, and there's Clark Kellogg. Elvis Gerbach, Desmond Howard, the Golick brothers, Bob and Mike Golick went there. So I will continue scrolling through. I'm to the M's now, and there are a lot. Turns out there are a lot of people in the Hall of Fame in Cleveland at Villa Angela St. Joseph.
Do you think they're too lenient on who they induct based on how much scrolling you're doing? The inverse to the scrolling is how lackadaisical you are in your rigors on the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I assume Desmond Howard is not in for his broadcast work, but if he is, boy, then they are definitely a little too lax there. Yeah, just almost through. I'm through the S's. Still not. Think we might have hit the high point of. There is a Stover, but not Reggie Stover from 1983. No relation, I assume, to the more recent Stovers of fame in Ohio. And I think we're through to the end. Yes. Rear Admiral Ronald J. Zlatoper, Tony, class of 1959. So there you go. Big
Pearl Mengus.
Larry wants to know, Tony, I'm just going to put this one a T for you. Larry wants to know, did Ohio State get Bo Jackson if Tony Alford was still the running backs coach?
I think so. And I wonder how much of the Georgia thing was just getting to know a new coach. And that's why you're like, well, let me see what else is out there. And then you eventually find out after seeing everything going everywhere. It's like, yeah, I kind of rather I liked what it was at Ohio State. I like Carlos Locklyn. I liked Tony Alford. I'm still comfortable. It's still home. So I think maybe the interesting thing is, yes, I think they would still get Bo Jackson, but would it have been now, or would Tony Alford be too focused on Florida kids to, rein in the Ohio kid at this point? And I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how the running back class shapes up and whether Carlos Locklyn can lock up the guys that Tony Alford had a year ago at this time. Because we assumed Bo Jackson, because a year ago at this time when we're going to be at camps tomorrow. And one of those days at camps, it was Marquise Davis, Bo Jackson, Jordan Davison, all working the same thing, going through the same drills, or maybe one day after the other. But the same week, they're all there. And you're like, they could take all three of these guys, and then Torrey Blaylock was there from Texas. Like, why is he here? Why is this Texas 4-star here as well? So it's like, well, who are they going to take of these guys? And it seemed for a while almost like Tony Alford had his pick. Now, that never materialized because none of them committed while he was still the coach. But I think they still get Bo Jackson. I do think whatever happens after this wouldn't have happened, essentially. This has changed a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of things have changed. And, there was Mika Hanna said he really want to break the Mater Dei curse and get Jordan Davison from Mater Dei High School out in California, really big powerhouse school in California. The last player, however, from there, Ohio State has been in on players from Mater Dei for seemingly at least every year or two for about the last 30 years. I believe Nikki Sualua is the last player from Mater Dei still to come to Ohio State, and he was probably a 92 recruit. I think he was 95 was his last season with the Buckeyes, so I think he probably would have been about a 1992 recruit. And yeah, it has been a minute, and it is not because that school has not pumped out high-level Power 5 FBS talent. They just have not gotten them to come from Mater Dei to Columbus. With Carlos Locklyn's previous relationship with Jordan Davison, he he was recruiting Jordan Davison when he was at Oregon. So this is, Jordan Davison is obviously very familiar with the school, having visited a number of times. He's also very familiar with the running backs coach, Carlos Locklyn, having had a previous relationship there. So it feels like that's about as good a chance as they've had to break that modern day curse. We'll see. There's a long way to go between now and early signing day. Super chat from Omar Austin. Gun to the head, Tony. Jedi or Sith? Follow up. Gun to the head, Tony. Ball or gag? If you just want to answer the first one, I think that will be sufficient for the super chat.
Will it? You think so?
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the thing. Like you can start out as a Jedi and eventually become a Sith. So like, why not? Like ball or gag? Why not go both worlds? Just go ahead and enjoy yourself. And dark side, light side, however you feel. I mean, you only live once, right? Right, Tom? Nikki Siwalua was a true freshman in 1993. So
okay, there you go. All right. Fort Wayne Buckeye. Can Buckeye Huddle do an NIL deal with Bo? Bo knows message board. Bo knows podcast. Bo knows Hungry Huddle. I mean, there's probably, I'm going to say, some ethical issues with cutting an NIL deal with a current player who we're covering. I know that's something that some outlets have done in the past. I do feel like whether it's with Buckeye Huddle or some other entity, he could cut a deal with Nike. If Bo Jackson turns into a really good college running back, that feels like that's an ad campaign that is just absolutely begging to happen. Bo knows, and get him with the
shoulder pads in the bat.
The shoulder pads in the bat.
Yeah. Ohio State should be doing that right now.
Yeah, they can't do that yet because he hasn't signed. But I guess
the photo,
that's true.
The photo shoots,
and they are doing the vintage look on those photo shoots now because they have the wood pan. That I know that has gotten some mixed reactions. Man, I think that is a great nostalgia trip because if you don't know what I'm talking about, like, and all of the official photos from the official visits where they do the photo shoots, they have set up a room, and sometimes places will do a set. They had a set a couple of years ago where it's like a brick wall and chains and weights, and it's like, oh, the hardest place in the world. They have it now set up like it's just wood paneling and a sofa. It is everyone's grandparents' basement from 30 years ago. That I think people look at that and go, that's so dated. Like, no, I would bet everyone's grandparents still have that basic look in about 80% of America. Like, if you have not lived in a house with that exact wood paneling, I think that's one of those things that, like, that's one of those tests that they give suspected spies. Like, oh, have you ever been in a house with this paneling? Oh, you haven't? Oh, comrade. All right, I see how it is. It's like that, and those like Tupperware pitchers with the little lids with the buttons from the 80s, and like the Corningware dishes with the blue flowers on the sides. Like, yeah, if you don't know what that is, you are definitely not someone who grew up in America. So yeah, I think the wood paneling, I think that hits exactly right. I thought that was a great look. And if you're going to do the 80s wood paneling, you can absolutely do the Bo Jackson 1980s shoulder pads and bat pose.
Of course, you love the wood paneling. You've got the 87 tops behind you.
I do. Yes.
I will also say there's a Twitter account. Like, I think it's Midwest versus Everybody. And it's just, stuff about the Midwest. And they showed like this picture, like all Midwest church basements are like this. And I looked down like, is that my church basement from my childhood? Because they looked exactly like it. It's like, that's where we would go and get like the Sprite and the Kool-Aid. And, you get some cookies after. And then I had like, no, we didn't have that extra thing over there. But it's like that. They got the posts in the middle of the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was like all church basements. It was pretty spooky.
Mm-hmm. Lisa Sims says my birthday is in 43 days. So congratulations, Lisa. Maybe we'll add that to the countdown at the beginning of the podcast.
I had a question for you, Tom. We recorded the morning show a little bit ago, and I didn't want to interrupt, but say it comes down to the fact that we know Ohio State and Michigan are going to play in the Big Ten championship game before they play in the regular season. Are you going to then add the countdown for the Big Ten championship game to that? So Ohio State and Michigan play in 4 days. Ohio State and Michigan play in 11 days. Like,
that feels like something that's probably not going to come up this year for reasons having to do with Michigan not being very good. But I think you probably have to. I did think about the fact when there was a possibility a couple of years ago that Ohio State and Michigan could have been playing in the national championship game if they had both won their semifinals. And then also, and she would have had 2 Michigan games in the countdown probably. So yeah, it's we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but I'm not expecting that to be an issue this year. Mika Hanna reminds us we're talking about the defensive line class, and I was thinking back to early signing day in December, and they only had Eric Mensah, and then they did end up getting Edric Houston. I did forget they ended up signing Dominic Kirks in February.
Yes.
He was committed to Washington at that point. He was, there were sort of reports that he was maybe thinking about it, and Mark had sort of heard that he was thinking about decommitting from Washington and didn't sign with Washington that day. But yes, they did get another defensive end in that class. Thank you, Mika, for reminding us of that. Omar Austin Super Chat. Can you guys please say hello to Tracy so she knows I'm spending all of her money on Super Chats? And she's definitely said, Tony definitely looks like a gag man. I assume she means jokes, like punchlines, yes. Like, yeah.
Waka.
Tracy joined us for lunch when we back in April. Definitely a valued member of the Buckeye Huddle community as well. Tracy, great to have you watching as well.
Yes, hello Tracy. Omar's better half by far.
All right, I'm just looking through the rest of the. Larry wants to know, Tony, did you order your Phil Steele magazine yet?
I have. We should be getting the digital copy like maybe later this week. I think it goes to the presses on the 6th or the 7th. And once it gets there, then they press it into the Kindle book, and then you can get it on your telephone. So should have some access. And then we may actually get it by next week. So if you've done your pre-order, you'll get it in the mail, and then you'll get access. You'll get access to the digital copy well before then. So, yep, it's all done.
Jeff Frazier wants to know if Howard gets hurt a few games into the season, will Howard, who takes over for him?
Well, I like the question there. Is it Julian Sands or Devin Brown? Now, Julian Sands, the famous actor, Tom, let me finish. No. Well, I think it depends on let's see, a few games into it. I think you go with Devin Brown. I do wonder at some point we haven't seen Devin Brown stay healthy for an entire season. So granted, he's not had a huge body of work, but I do, I need to see him stay healthy for an entire season, because it's just like he broke his finger, he rolled his ankle, then he rolled a different ankle. So you've got this injury history. You shouldn't have an injury history when you're not playing much. So that's a concern. So I'm not going to be completely shocked if Julian Sands starts a game this year. I don't see him beating somebody out to do it, though. I think he's he can be the third guy and still end up getting a start.
He could, and I think we don't want to forget Lincoln Kienholz in here either, where when Devin Brown went out last year in the Cotton Bowl, it was Lincoln Kienholz who came in and who was very obviously, and really himself said, wasn't really ready to play at that point through no real fault of his own. He came in last June and had played real small school South Dakota high school football, and there's a little bit of a leap from that to Big Ten national Cotton Bowl level Big Ten SEC football. So, I think people maybe are sort of overlooking him to a certain degree right now, just based on sort of an unfair sample size of one game where he was thrown into a spot where he really was not ready to be, but that had to do with one quarterback transferring and another quarterback getting hurt. So yeah, if you tell me that there are 3 quarterbacks who take meaningful snaps for Ohio State this year, I think they could still have a pretty good season with that, depending on how long some of the injuries lasted. But I wouldn't say 3 quarterbacks taking meaningful snaps, whether it's Howard and Brown and Kienholz or Howard and Brown and Sayin or some other combination of those guys. I don't think that would be something that I would immediately say, oh, this season is automatically a disaster and there's no way they could win the Big Ten or win the national championship.
So, Tom, I did the second edition of my 50 for 50 that I'm putting on Buckeye Huddle right now. And my Ohio State prediction is that 4 Buckeye quarterbacks will account for touchdowns this year. It's never been done before. So I went back.
4 Buckeye quarterbacks. Yeah. 4 Buckeye quarterbacks will account for touchdowns. That feels like that's impossible that has never happened. They've had seasons. I mean, you're playing walk-ons and backups and young guys. And I guess one thing that goes against that is the old redshirt rule, where generally you didn't ever play as a true freshman quarterback. So that probably worked against you to a certain degree. But
they had more quarterbacks back then too.
They did. And, the years where they had 3 starting quarterbacks, Braxton Miller got hurt before the season, so he
Mhm.
didn't actually, play that year in 2014. So that's something that probably, because I'm going to guess 3 other guys accounted for touchdowns that year, probably. So
No, not that year.
no, not that year. Okay.
So over the last 65 years or 60 plus years, all the way back to 1961, then I stopped really keeping count of the times that 3 guys did it. So 14 times since 1961, 3 quarterbacks have done it. Do you know the last time it happened, Tom?
3 quarterbacks. It had to be, was it 2017 with Haskins and Burrow and Barrett?
No, Tom, it was 2019
With
Justin Fields
and Chris Chuganoff and 29. Is it? No, it wouldn't be. I was thinking Tate, but it was the year after Tate. Who was the third quarterback?
Transferred from an SEC school to compete for the starting job?
Gunnar Hoke. There it is. Gunnar Hoke, yes, because he had a 40-yard touchdown pass or something in one of those
Gunnar
games.
Hoke was 6 for 6 for 104 yards in 2019. Drew Crispin, 1 for 1, did not throw a touchdown pass, though. Also wouldn't have counted because he was not a quarterback. Chris Chuganoff that year threw 6 touchdown passes, by the way. So
yeah, Chris Chuganoff was like, I think he gets lumped in with all the the guys who have come in and really not ever competed for the start. Chris Chuganoff had a better career than you remember at Ohio State. He was a really solid, there would have been a drop off from Justin Fields, don't get me wrong, but he was a really solid backup for them at a time when, boy, the quarterback room got real thin there for a minute after Matthew Baldwin transferred out and Tate Martell transferred out and Fields transferred in. It got real dicey there for a hot minute, and Chris Chuganoff was someone who filled a very, very important spot on that team.
That's why I always called him Chuggy Guyton, because he was a fantastic quarterback off the bench. 6 of 7 against Miami, 2 touchdowns. Only 5 of 14 against Rutgers, but we know Greg Schiano is a master of defense.
Not everyone can go 10 for 10 against Rutgers, Tony. That's only for the select few. Cannot be taller than the bar to go higher, to go 10 for 10 against Rutgers. Lisa Sims wants to know when the 4 new teams' contracts officially starts with the Big Ten. I believe that is July 1st. That is typically when the college athletics sort of financial year begins and ends, is June 30th to July 1st. So I'm going to guess that's the answer, because they're going to be part of Big Ten Media Days in July 23rd or whatever it is. So
now I will say Google says August 2nd.
Well, then,
but ostensibly,
I would, maybe that has to do with the Pac-12. Could that be that just Oregon and Washington are jumping in later because USC and UCLA were here earlier? Could there be a difference there? Because that feels like a weird time for that to happen.
No, it says all 4, but again, that's
okay.
That's just the internet.
That's AI. I'm surprised it's not telling you to pour a pitcher of Kool-Aid over your head and they'll answer that question. All right, thank you, AI. You're making life better for all of us.
Yeah, it's happening soon. But you don't need that's actual intelligence.
Yes. And they will be there for Big Ten Media Days. So functionally, it doesn't really matter. There's no more sports happening in the Big Ten between now and then. So it'll be
fun. Well, and that's why we have 3 days of Big Ten Media Days now, is because you've got 4 more teams. So we've gone from 2 days to 3 days, went from 1 to 2, I don't know, a decade or so ago, maybe with Maryland and Rutgers at that point. And now 3 days in Indianapolis. I hope it never moves, but if it does, maybe Vegas is the go-to of what some rumors are out there. But that is 6 weeks away, so it's quickly approaching. 48 days, 49 days actually, Tom. So 7 weeks.
Can't wait. We better wrap up the show before we have to, so we can start packing for Big Ten Media Days.
Yes. So we do want to thank you all, and if you have not yet hit the thumbs up, please do before you go. Thank you all for tuning in on this just random Tuesday night. Always be on call. That's why you hit the thumbs up. That's why you hit the bell to be notified when we go live. So thank you all for tuning in. And of course, you can always find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Still running the spring annual sale right now. If you want to get in for a discounted price for an entire year, check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So thank you all. and we will talk to you guys later.